Okay, thank you. All right, I need a motion to
Should open a public hearing for an entertainment license.
Second.
Reservation.
all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, the outdoor entertainment license application for Wallalone Reservation Incorporated Entertainment Holiday Light Show, November 25th through December 30th, 2023.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, members of the council, Attorney Stephen Surdit, on behalf of the Smith family who are here tonight as well. Happy to address any questions or concerns the board has. I know you have a lengthy agenda, so I won't try not to take up a lot of your time. This is the second year the Smith family has run the program. As I had an opportunity to speak with your chief, as he said this to me today. Previous to that, there was an outside company that didn't do a great job. That's why they're not here anymore. Last year, the Smith family ran it, and my understanding is that there were no issues. It was a great event. There was a lot of turnout from the local and the extended community, and we're hopeful that it goes the same way again. I believe we met all the requirements of your application, and I believe the waiver we're asking for is for a police escort based upon the fact that they do a great job over there with traffic all year round and will continue to do so during this event. So with that, I'd welcome any questions or thoughts.
Okay, I have none. Does anyone on the council have
I
any?
put it on my calendar.
We look forward to seeing you.
If I may, just the zoning on the checklist that was attached on Friday. It's reflected that Walloon has received their sign off from zoning.
Okay. Any comments from the taxpayers?
Move to
Any-
close,
Anything online? Okay,
move to close public hearing.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That was easy.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
To open up a public hearing, D2. Discussion and consideration of proposal on amendments, chapter 1808 and 1816, the Richmond zoning ordinance.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, discussion?
You want to hear from us first or the people?
I'd like to, an expert, our planner, if you have anything to, I read an email that you sent out, and I personally view it as a benefit to the town, but I wanted to hear your opinion and your thoughts.
Polly Gillette, town planner. I would not necessarily call myself an expert on this, but I appreciate the accolade. So there were a number of recommendations provided by the planning board in relation to specific zones where this could be allowed, either permitted or with a special use permit. The important thing to know is that there are only going to be, at least through this particular iteration of the Rhode Island Cannabis Act, 24 retail exclusive licenses, and that each of the licenses are going to be divided up into zones. And there are a number of different zones, and we are in zone number 5. And that means that there are 4 retail licenses that are available in the entirety of that zone. And that includes, let me just get to the right page. It's like Richmond, Hopkinton, Exeter, South Kingstown, Narragansett, and Westerly. There might be one other one that I'm missing, but it's all of these communities will be vying for the licenses. There also are provisions to allow existing compassion centers to become hybrid retailers. But I had conversations with our zoning official and our building official today, and I asked if they knew of any locations that were compassion centers in Richmond, and they didn't know of any. So it's not as though the camel could be
They're
proverbially,
prohibited right now.
yeah, proverbially let in through the nose in
Right.
that avenue. So that's really where it stands right now. This is not to say that this act can't be further amended in the future. There are provisions within it that say that the various bodies that are governing the administration of the act are going to look into the future to see, okay, how is this working for the state? So, but I don't have a crystal ball, none of us do, so I can't really speak to what might happen in the future, but that's where it stands right now.
Right.
So if you have the discussion with the planning board predated my time here, but they generally agreed that there would not be any cannabis retail in residential zones. They suggested that in neighborhood business, you could have a special use permit for it. It would be permitted in general business, permitted in light industrial, permitted in industrial. It would not be permitted in the PD zone. There was a discussion that maybe the PUDBC zone, which currently exists, but might no longer exist in the future. I'm not entirely sure what that specific conversation was. Agreed that might be pertinent. It would not be permitted in Flex Tech or the Shannick Village. It would not be allowed for retail or cultivation in that agricultural overlay. And all of the definitions that were discussed are state definitions, so we can't change them.
Right.
That there's the overarching rules by the state that we can't amend.
I had conversations with a couple of people on the town council in Exeter. They have a retail location, Sweet Spot. And they've seen no problems, absolutely, positively, no problems at all. And they've seen a great deal of revenue from the facility. So if we don't capitalize on it, someone else will. And we're always talking about bringing in business, and we're always talking about offsetting the taxpayers' taxes with some sort of commercial taxation. So I think this would be an ideal opportunity.
So the act allowed different communities to have it as a ballot question. And by virtue of having it as the ballot question, the voters in Richmond were able to say yes or no. They voted yes.
Mhm.
And that allows us to tap into that revenue that will come in the form of a 3% tax.
It's 3% on the gross, I believe.
I believe so, yeah.
And
But if we had said no outright, or if we as a town, as the voters had denied it, then we would not necessarily be able to receive that 3%. So even if we don't have a facility in the town, we're still going to be benefiting from that.
for 3%,
Yes.
I thought it was only for the hosting town. That's how
Is it just for the hosting town?
Karen,
I think it is, yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
I could be wrong. Like I said,
because I
I'm not
know
an
that
expert.
they've seen a landslide of money in Exeter from it. And I've been to it, I've checked it out. It's very professionally run, it's very secure. People
There's
would,
a 10% tax on the retail sales.
right,
The 7% is the state sales tax, and the other 3% goes to the town that hosts the facility.
oh, thank you for clarification.
Yes, thank you. I've been reading it over the past couple of days and I've been annotating it, but there are always going to be intricacies that I might not know off the top of my head. So thank you, Karen.
I thought the money part was the most important, so I remember that.
Does that- Anyone on the council have questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
If there are 4 of them allowed in this, probably Washington County, and one of them is already in Exeter, I assume they're not going to take their license away. So that means there are 3 left.
One of them is in South Kingstown. Also, there's one in
Oh,
South-
So there's
okay,
2
so there
left.
are only 2 left. All right, so how will it?
We might not necessarily have one.
How would it be
This-
determined who would get it?
Well, there would have to be an applicant for it. Somebody would have to apply for it.
I know of 2 potential applicants that are waiting on our decision.
Yeah.
One of them is the company that owns the grow facility on 138.
Right, yeah, what the new state law did was sort of merge all of the different kinds of cannabis businesses into one business. They don't distinguish anymore between different types of cultivators or different types of retail situations.
Right.
So I believe because they were growers, they were already allowed to expand the business. I believe to include retail, but I don't think that part of the law has yet taken effect because the commission that was established to regulate the cannabis.
They haven't acted yet.
They were just appointed, I think, 2 months ago, and they haven't promulgated any regulations.
There's still a way to go before we would have the retail element in Richmond. This is just setting the table for a potential application in the future. And it would signal to parties out there who might want to apply that Richmond is a place where you could bring this business.
It would be ideal on 138 for the business. And again, the tax revenue for the town would be great. And if people are buying from a retail facility like that, they're buying a much purer and much more safe product than if they were buying it somewhere else. Any other?
I have a quick question for the chief. Having some family members in law enforcement, just seems like two vices kind of go with the other. A lot of times pull over, there's alcohol and drugs, whether it be, excessive use of marijuana or prescription or illegal drugs. Is the Richmond Police Department going to be able to have somebody out on the road? Because I know they're retraining for like a field sobriety test on the road for alcohol. Are young men going to be trained for marijuana?
So I think I get your question. The train has left the station and it is legal for recreational purposes. We do have a concern, youth access, but frankly, people have no problem getting marijuana now anyways. There are a lot of smaller home grows. It's retail in other locations that they're buying it legally now. We've seen an uptick in the level of intoxication, but it's not necessarily marijuana because what we can measure with the breathalyzer, which is relatively non-invasive, the levels of intoxication staggering. It just seems like people have taken the filter off when it comes to self-abuse. And there are times where they blow, within a lower limit, but their physical dexterity is so compromised, their inability to speak, and they often acknowledge they smoke marijuana in addition to that. It's anecdotal. I mean, I have a concern about the impact on people that have conditions like bipolar. We have people in the community with mental health issues. I have seen where they're self-medicating with marijuana exacerbates their illness. That said, we'll police to the degree that we need to on whatever is permitted. And this is something that's already been authorized for this particular region. The taxpayers here said, I think it was by 55%, they were in approval of it. I do have concerns, Councilman, I think you do too, about people, the pervasiveness of this particular drug being not harmful. I think to some people it's not harmful. There are people that use it responsibly. There are medical conditions that it has alleviated some of the symptoms. But I'm always concerned about the people that just don't know enough and are become addicted to certain things.
Well, the addiction level is what I'm concerned about, because if you look at statistically Colorado, and when they legalized it years back, there was a big uptick in schizophrenia with the advent of passing of, the use of marijuana, and that's a hard statistic. it's there, so.
As it sits right now, we've got consumers in the town of Richmond and surrounding towns that are going to Exeter and South Kingstown to purchase whatever they need to purchase. And the town is missing out on the revenue.
Mr. President,
That's my concern. Go ahead.
if someone were to choose to open right off the highway, we may not even be selling to just residents. We'd be selling to people heading over to Newport and Jamestown, may not realize it's sold in South Kingstown. So it's not just affecting our residents, but the pass through possibility that we are always saying that our town can be as well. So I just wanted to tag on to that.
It's important to note that driving under the influence of marijuana is still illegal, even though recreational marijuana has been legalized in the state. That also applies to not being able to operate a boat or other,
Right.
forms of conveyance, not just a car. So there are still a number of provisions that relate to that element.
I don't think by opening a retail facility in this town, we would reduce, by not opening a retail facility in this town, we would not reduce the use at all. We would just gain if we open, if one were to open, we would gain in taxes. People who want to smoke it are going to buy it, and they're going to buy it next door. Sweet Spot is 15 minutes away. And right now, we have Richmond residents, Hopkinton residents going to Sweet Spot, and Exeter is getting 3% of the gross. So I just personally, my feeling is I don't want to miss out. As the chief said, the train has left the station. We're not going to, by prohibiting retail marijuana facilities in Richmond, we are not going to reduce the use of marijuana in Richmond at all. There is going to be a zero decrease in that.
Mr. President,
Sure.
Chief, you're gonna be allowed to smoke in your car, walking down the sidewalk. I think we discussed that in the ordinance. It's-
No, thanks to the council. No, that is actually a violation of town ordinance, use in public spaces. Obviously, if they're using while they're in a car, the concern is, are they impaired? And then that would lead to additional steps on a motor vehicle stop.
The comment, and this is gonna be the last thing I'm gonna say about this. As a parent of 6 and 8 granddaughters, I remember the commercial years back when the father walks into the kid's bedroom, he's got a cigar box, and he yells at the kid, "Who taught you? Who taught you how to do this?" And then the kid looks at the father and says, "You did, Dad, you did." So with that being said, I wouldn't condone it with my kids or my grandkids, because you always have to be an example, because it is a substance that can be abused. And as growing up, I'll never forget that commercial. That said it all right there. So adults can be examples or they can be bad examples. Wherever you fall.
Mr. President.
Rich was first then.
Chief, this is a question for you. Edibles. Have in your officers, interactions with the public, people who have used, edibles and whatnot, are you seeing any, or have you seen any issues with little kids? Because Mark just had himself an edible.
After medical marijuana became law in this state and people began growing at home, we saw all kinds of things. And edibles was one of the big ones we saw that were of the greatest concern, because the THC content, when I started with the state police in 1987, oregano might have had more THC than marijuana. And I say that facetiously, but bags of dirt was essentially what we were seeing on the road. What you found in the mid 2014, 15, 16 are these buds that are so ripe with THC and high quality. And then they convert them into these edibles. We saw in the high school kids that would be eating things that looked like gummy bears. Some trying to get an effect, and some didn't know what they were eating. They thought it was candy. And 1/4 of a gummy bear is a hit. Well, when you consume something, it takes longer to get into your bloodstream to feel the effect. So people are impatient in the society anyways. They eat the head off, then they eat the whole thing, waiting for and let's not hit. All of a sudden, they've overdosed on an edible. and they have to get raced to the hospital. Fortunately, we never had any serious injuries or fatalities, but we had some scares.
That's been recently changed. About a year and a half ago, they limited edibles to 5 milligrams and 10 milligrams.
Yeah, but I'm talking about homemade stuff, Mr.
Oh.
President, and this was, I dated it, said it was 2014, 15. I'm not making a political statement
Okay.
here. I'm sharing my own observations and
Okay.
experience.
I appreciate it.
And I haven't seen a lot in the way of edibles that have been concerning the way that they were in 2015, 16, 17. The fact is, like Coastal Farms, I've toured that facility when they first built it. It's state of the art. It's a licensed grow that was much more heavily regulated than the house grows that we had when people had compassion cards or provider cards, and they were growing in moldy basements. And that's the honest, it was an improvement in the law when they went to a licensed cultivator. So, you know, the law is the law. We will operate within the confines and the parameters of that. Regardless of what gets passed here or elsewhere, we'll get the job done. There are concerns we have, but we're hoping that they're not realized.
There are a number of provisions in this act that relate to how these products can be packaged. And a lot of them relate to not having like cartoon graphics or things that would be attractive to children, and also like child safe locks and things of that nature. And I know that those things are not foolproof, but those are kind of baked into the cake of this act to try to prevent that kind of activity. And there are also elements of this act that delineate what happens if you provide these substances to people under the age of 21. And they're pretty stringent, so.
The edibles are packaged in either a black or white container. They're child-proof, they're adult-proof. And they have ginormous warnings on the side. Contains THC, and it will give you the percentage of the THC that it contains. The retail marijuana is put through a machine that eradicates any kind of mold in them. And they're very, very heavily regulated, and it's a very scientific process at this point.
Organic.
Yeah.
They're required to be grown organically.
Mr. President, if the town ends up agreeing to go for a license, I would like it to not be allowed in the general business area. Let it go to the light industrial, or someplace where people don't have to go unless they want to.
To make it so that it's it's not a favorable, not say favorable, but it's, you're not going down a dark alley, but you're not going to like next door to the coffee shop. You're not going to someplace where you're gonna go get ice cream and get your edibles and your marijuana and leaves.
Correct.
I agree.
What they did is in Exeter is they have that industrial park up on the hill. So they're, other than a very small and modest sign, it's half a mile off the road, and nobody knows it's there unless they buy. I've been up in Massachusetts, and in Massachusetts, it seems there's a retail facility on every corner in Attleboro. My gosh, I've never seen that. Every empty store has now become a marijuana retailer, and that's just out of control.
Mr. President.
Yes.
I see the concern and why you'd want to limit where it could be, but just pulling up the map real quick, that seems to just reduce the opportunity for somebody looking to open business somewhere. I guess there's some in southern Richmond too, but perhaps general business could be special use where they have to come to the planning board and ask and have them approve whether or not it's okay to have it next to the ice cream shop or something like that. Would that be an option? I think.
I personally am not concerned where it is, because I think you have to present an ID to go in there. They check the ID a second time. They scan the ID into a computer. The state gets notification,
Right, good point.
and no child could go in there and buy it.
Right, that was a question I was gonna ask. Kids are not allowed in because they
Right.
don't have an ID to scan.
Right.
That makes sense. All right.
You can't even be on, per the act, you can't even have them in the facility. If they're under the age of 21, there are special dispensations for if you work for the state government in the capacity of like you're inspecting the location, but that's a whole other ball of wax
Right.
entirely anyway, because you'd be there in your official capacity and not as just purchaser, customer.
Mr. President, I think that's a good point about being an industrial, light industrial. Because years back when we bought the pawn shop that was gonna wanna go in where Dragon Palace is. You know, not too far from there, the kids do the car washes and stuff like that to raise money. The Girl Scouts sell their cookies and whatnot. So, you know, with that being said, I don't think it would have been a very good spot for a pawn shop. Right in the center of town where, you know, kids riding the school bus to Charahoe are going by it every single day, riding their bikes and whatnot. I think that holds some merit about restricting it to industrial, light industrial. So if you want to go there, look, you got your phone, put the map in, and you're there. I think that was a good point.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Another point I guess I'd make is just the way cannabis is now viewed is more along the lines of alcohol.
Mhm.
And we have those businesses in the general business zone. So I understand the caution, and that's why maybe a special use permit would be a good compromise. But I had another point I was gonna make. Oh, but the one thing I really liked about this was that it kind of just aligned with the alcohol option.
I think that it's mainstream now. I don't think there's a stigma like pornography and the sex trade. I wouldn't equate the two at all. I think that's really unfair. It sounds like the 1915 mentality that they used to claim that marijuana was a African-American drug and white people didn't do it. And this is 2023. It's been legal in many states. Like anything, it can be abused. I'm pre-diabetic. If I eat too many of these sugary candies, I'm going to be laying on the floor here. So I just think it's an opportunity that we need to jump on before somebody else eats our lunch again. Because so many places have come, wanted to locate in Richmond, and because we moved too slowly or we put too many stipulations on it, before you know it, they've moved somewhere else. We've lost out on the tax revenue, and everybody gets to pay more taxes next year. So that being said, if there's no more comments on the council, I'd like to invite the public to come up. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to come up and speak?
Hearing none, motion to close public hearing. Oh, sorry, anybody online? Motion to close public hearing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 So,
So, Mr. President, I'm going to just throw a motion to approve the proposed amendments to chapter 18.08 and 18.16 of the Richmond zoning ordinance. Do I have a second?
I'd like to amend that to exclude general business.
don't think that's a good idea. I think it's cutting off it's doing,
Order, I don't know if my motion got a second.
I'll
Yeah.
say.
Thank you.
okay, all
I
right.
think
Now,
you have
now,
to vote on the whether to amend them.
okay, so,
There's been, Helen moved to amend the pending motion.
I second it.
So I think you have to vote on whether you want to amend the motion before you vote on the motion itself.
all right, in that case,
Quick discussion. I would be amenable to having it be special use, but I think removing it entirely is too restrictive. So I'll be voting no against the amendment.
I will also be voting no against the amendment.
I was gonna say, I would not recommend that it be made as special permit use. It would be very, very difficult to articulate the precise limitations that you wanted to put on it. And it would be inviting a lawsuit. It would be really difficult, especially under the 2023 amendments to the land use laws. It would be really difficult to do.
You don't need another lawsuit.
Yeah, you know,
As much as I may agree with you. I don't wanna miss an opportunity. I have my own issues, personal issues, but I'll look at it from a different point of view. And we don't need to get ourselves into the thicker weeds. If she's telling us that something is gonna end up in a lawsuit, we don't need to go there. Especially if we're trying to attract businesses.
Excuse me, Mr. President, we're not gonna get a lawsuit if we eliminate general business. We have a lawsuit if we put in special use.
Right. I'm still against putting further stipulations on it. I think we need to do what we can to get, we were willing to, some of us were willing to forego the APOD legislation in order to possibly lure more business in. This is far less onerous, and yet we're arguing over it. So let's take a vote on as to who wants to amend the motion that's on the floor. Do you want to amend it?
No.
Rich? No.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, so,
so now you're voting on the original.
okay, so we'll take a vote on the original motion.
I would just like
Okay,
to comment.
Go ahead.
I am going to approve this motion, even though I don't like it, but 55% of the voters said they wanted it. So I feel as if I have to vote yes.
Okay, Mike, how do you vote?
No. No.
Yes.
As much as I like business and I like the potential of income, I still look at the safety side of it. I look at it from the chief's point of view. The edible things, those bother me. I say no.
Yes,
Okay, motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Mr. President, if nobody has anything to pull, oh, you do?
One,
I have something to pull to one.
Aaron, could I have a?
E1 and E1B. E1A, E1B.
All right, so Mr. President,
Yes.
motion to approve.
And excuse me,
Oh.
and also the executive session minutes.
So all of one.
All,
Mr. President,
Yeah,
motion to approve consent agenda item 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Second.
all those in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Right, so what did we do with one? Karen, what did we do with one?
You pulled everything on one, A,
Yeah.
B, and C.
Mhm.
That means if somebody wants to talk about something that's in there, so we take them individually.
Okay, Rich first, because he had to,
Recusing from one.
okay,
If that's the only objection, then someone can move
Mike
to
had-
approve it.
yeah,
three.
on one E, 1A. On the third page. Where it said Council Colasanti discussed the open permits at the Washington County Fair. I stated that Mr. Valencourt had an email from the secretary stating that they were at the fairgrounds, they had in excess of 50 open permits.
I'm sorry, where are you on page 3?
Page 3. Where it
That's
says-
open permits at Washington County Fair.
Right. I stated that Mr. Valencourt got an email from the secretary stating that the fairgrounds had in excess of 15 or more open permits.
And
So you stated Mr. Valencourt said we received an email from the secretary.
stating that the fairgrounds had 15 or more open permits.
Just, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Just to correct, her title is clerk, not secretary. I believe,
Thank you.
The building clerk.
yeah. So if there are no other amendments, I guess I'll, Mr. President, motion to approve 1A. With amendments, with changes.
Second,
All those in favor?
I,
aye.
Aye.
Recused.
Okay, now, item 1B. Mike, you had a,
Yep. And page 7. When we were discussing the extra cost of the generator for the town hall. That's correct about the $25,000 extra. But I also mentioned that were there any grants out to town administrator? And she said there were no grants. But then I mentioned that there was a $96,000 check that came in from the solar field on June 16, 2023. That could be used to pay for part of that.
Mr. President, I believe after that, Administrator Pinch offered more feedback. I think she said it was already budgeted or something like that. I would like to ask if she wanted to offer clarity. Just so that's parts properly reflected.
Clerk can review the minutes or review the video.
Okay, all right. Just that would be nice to include as well.
And
So, sorry, so if I'll review for the direct comment from Mr. Colasanti, would you like me to add your direct comments in response to that thing? Because I can, okay.
And then on page 9. Vice President Husseini stated that Mr. Colasanti had the capability to respond to a simple email. He further indicated that the packet is no more than a simple email. He stated if you want to print it out, you can print it out. And Mr. Husseini also said, don't play games. And Aaron, during that whole discussion too, there were no comments by resident Joan Kent. I would like to have those put into the minutes also
During,
during that discussion, page 9. And then on page 11. Town Council President Trimmer is making the comment that Colasanti shouldn't assume that we haven't hired people. President Trimmer stated that he was responsible for 70 employees under him.
so you want me to add your statement in response to that?
No, that Mr. Trimmer stated that he was responsible for 70 employees under him.
Not currently. No employees.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I wasn't gonna pull the minutes over this, but since they've already been pulled, about halfway down on page 4, it says, it starts with Counselor Wilcox stated another residential property owner. At the end, it says concern about uses more than just motocross, such as camping and motocross. If that last motocross could be fixed to helicopter, just a minor typo. Thank you. And unless anybody else has comments, I'll do a motion to approve minutes with the amendments.
Second,
All those in favor?
I,
aye,
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Was there, you had also pulled the September 5th executive session.
we have to make a special executive session meeting to go in and discuss these. Am I correct, Aaron?
Yeah, that'll have to be, so you'll have to continue that to the next executive session. And everybody who has minutes, turn them in and then we can discuss any amendments.
Still have one. Mark, you mind passing that down?
Sure.
We just need a motion to continue.
So moved,
Second,
I,
aye,
all those in favor?
I,
aye,
Aye. Recused.
Aye.
Okay. Approval of town department reports. We have already done that.
Forums.
Okay. So we open public forum. I'm gonna, as usual, ask people to be civil and polite. And please try and limit your time at the podium to 3 minutes or less. So is there anyone who'd like to step up and speak? Going once. Going twice. Closing public forum. So next is reports. And Karen, if you could,
So the first item I have is, discussion of partnering with Hopkinton on a community center funding opportunity. As you probably know, the state has, ARPA money that they've designated for community center projects. Back before this council, the council declined to participate because essentially you had to have a shovel-ready project. There was no way we could get a project together on the amount of time that they were allotting to that. The project has to be for construction or renovation of a community center. Those community centers have to provide 3 specific types of learning, so to speak. One is education, one is called health monitoring, and one is workforce development. Those things have to be carried out for a 5-year period after the center opens. A lot of towns have actually declined to take the funding because they're concerned that if it's interpreted that they haven't met these requirements, then they'll have to pay for the money back that they were given by the state for this funding. However, Hopkinton was already planning to build a community center. They have asked us if we would, since we had already said we were going to give up our funding, if we would designate our funding to their community so that we could basically our residents could share in the use of that facility. Laura and I both spoke to their town manager. Laura also expressed some concern about reporting and whether the town would be required to report or whether once we gave the money, it would be completely Hopkinton's issue, because obviously if there's any slip up, which I'm not anticipating, but if there had to be any money paid back or anything like that, we want to, since we're not administering it, we would obviously want to be absolved of all of that. And the state has told us that that money can be given to Hopkinton and they can be responsible for all the reporting. The alternative is by giving up the money and not designating it to Hopkinton, it gets spread by the formula to all the rest of the cities and towns. And already, like with other things we've seen, especially education, cities are getting a lot of money and the smaller local communities are not. So this helps our neighboring town and gives our residents an opportunity to use facilities. They also have, go ahead.
where is this facility located?
Yeah, so that is at Crandall Field.
That's what I thought.
And they currently have 3 full-time employees in their recreation department, where we have 1 part-time person who has a full-time job. Her primary function is
summer camp, and then a few select other programs during the year. So it would be a very heavy lift for us. We'd have to hire additional personnel, where they already have those people. They've provided me with a whole list of activities, some which they currently provide, some which they would incorporate into their new facility, which we would be able to take advantage of, or our residents would. And in exchange, obviously, like I said, we would get use of that, and I've asked Karen about trying to draw up an agreement between us and Hopkinton, which if you agree to the arrangement, Karen and their solicitor can work out an agreement. Hopkinton has a meeting on the 2nd, we have a meeting on the 3rd, so we could have it wrapped up before the Hopkinton's final application.
Well, if the choices is sharing the money and sharing the rewards or giving the money back, it seems pretty clear.
That was kind of the way we looked at it.
Yes, Mr. President, motion to approve the request to partner with Hopkinton.
Mr. President, I just wanted to
Can I just have a
add.
second for discussion?
Second.
Second.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I went to the Crandall house and looked at the facilities, I had a tour. I also met with Brian, the manager. So he made it pretty clear that if we we're not using the money. If we don't give it to them, it'll just be split, and Providence is already getting $17 million. So, and he said that they're getting 2 vans in 9 months. And he would be willing to also, this is not in writing, could change, but transport our Richmond people who wanted to go there for different activities.
That would only be fair given the money.
Right,
He mentioned that to me as well, and if you think about it, if, Providence gets 17 million, they can build a whole facility with 17 million. Hopkinton can't build a
They can
facility.
build a
with
dream
500,
facility.
600,000.
Right.
right,
So the cities get enough to do the whole thing.
Right.
And we get enough to do, a very small percentage of it.
so I drove there from my house. And I drove back to the center of the town to see how hard it was and how long it took me. It took 20 minutes from my house. It took 15 minutes to get back to the center of town using 138. So I don't know if people are accustomed. I mean, I think Hopkinton people are attuned to Richmond, but I don't know that Richmond's attuned to Hopkinton.
Well,
Mr.
maybe
President,
will be. Yeah.
I had the same concern because I was thinking I probably live the closest, just where I am in Richmond, and it's about a 12-minute ride for me. My daughter goes there a lot. But I just think it's better to partner with them. We have it for when we want it, or if people are okay with making a little bit of a drive, or if the van that was offered by the other town manager would work out, that'd be awesome too. Also just hoping for future partnering. It's a good way to start or keep it going because they're already a good partner with us.
I agree. I personally, when my 2 daughters were at school age, they both played Hopkinton Rec basketball, and I was a coach for 4 years with Hopkinton Rec basketball. And I just think Hopkinton does do a great job in running their thing. And if we can help it out and we can reap the benefits, I think it's a great thing. So with that being said, Louise?
Question.
President. Sorry, let the young lady go.
So I have a question about the attachment that was sent here in the materials to the agenda about this topic. It says in the first paragraph, at this time, there is now the ability for Richmond to designate our share of that funding towards Hopkinton's project. Karen, how much was our share?
Our share is as of September 15th, because this number is continually changing each time a community opts out,
Okay,
the share increases. As of September 15th, that number was $569,284.
okay. And it looks like there's going to be some sort of a discussion or something drafted between the 2 towns, and maybe this is a question for Solicitor Ellsworth. I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of a memorandum of understanding. And in such a memorandum of understanding, would there be any stipulation about future maintenance costs? Would Richmond be,
Yes.
responsible for future maintenance
Yes,
costs?
would have to figure all of that out.
Okay. Okay. And, how often would the town of Hopkinton be asking us for future support? I guess would be my question.
Yeah, we would have to figure that out too.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
Some of these questions that Ms. Dinsmore brought up with some of the things that I was just gonna ask you. Is there gonna be like a 3-5 year plan with this? Because there's still a lot of unknowns right now. And do we sign an agreement with all the unknowns? Or are we gonna sign an agreement with everything carved in stone?
After I speak to the town administrator about it, I'm gonna speak to the Hopkins solicitor, Steve Seipel, and I think Steve and I are gonna sit down and try to figure out all of the questions that we want to have answered by the agreement and then draft something that you will either approve or not approve at your next meeting. We're gonna try to anticipate everything that we possibly can that would be of concern financially to both towns.
Okay, there was one other thing too, it's when we were reaching an agreement with Hopkinton, with the water line, many moons ago, when I was on the council the first time. The councils actually met together. I don't know if that's a viable
I would say it's
option.
probably not necessary. Because if we can think of all of the questions and.
Are you that good?
No, but together, I mean, between me, Steve Seipel, Ryan Rosso, and Karen Pinch, we can probably anticipate most of the questions that you would raise. And try to address those in the draft.
You gotta let me borrow that crystal ball of yours.
Yes, I will.
Rich?
Is there a way for us to have an endowment out of that money? To create an endowment instead of giving them the whole entire lump sum? Keep some of it back?
That's a question I can't answer, but maybe Laura can.
You know, being in a restricted fund for maintenance or, you know, for.
No, the restrictions of this grant from the state are so limited, expansive, I guess,
Oh, okay.
that we could not administer it. Even if we kept back some of the money and said, okay, we'll give you half and we'll keep half. First of all, it has to all be committed by July of next year.
Okay.
That's the first. And the second is it still has to have that 5-year, 3 qualifications of workforce, health, and education. And that's designated space. It's not, and so it just becomes prohibitive for us to use the money.
Got it.
But it's great to be able to partner with them.
I'm fine with that. Just a question.
Young lady?
Hi, Talia Gillette, town planner. I'm just speaking, putting my 2 cents in relation to the wonderful work that Mary Sawyer, the recreation director in Hopkinton, has done. And I just wanted to give her a quick shout out. I think that if this agreement comes to fruition, that she'll do a great job for both towns.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else?
One more thing, Mr. President. It says on this letter from Karen that the education portion is covered in the Learn 365 compact. So I assume that means that Hopkinton will be taking over our 365 program.
Well, this won't, I mean, this building will not become a reality for probably realistically a couple of years. So I think we're gonna start the Learn 365 program just about immediately. It won't take the place of what we're doing right now, but at some point, maybe we will be able to hand that over.
Okay.
Maybe even designate our funding to them for that.
Mr. President, the 365 program, that was a grant from the state. What's the time parameters on that?
They're gonna start programs like this fall
Okay, but when does the funding run out?
on 365. I don't know the date.
I'm not part of that grant.
I have to look it up.
A year, 2 years,
Yeah, I think it's a couple of years.
couple of years?
Yeah,
So
I
this-
can get back to you
program
with the exact date, but
Yeah, because that program may not even be a viable one at that point. The building is up anyway.
Any questions from out in the public? Or anything remote? Okay, Do we
I
have,
made a motion, I think.
Okay.
Somebody said.
yeah, all right, so how do you vote?
I,
Aye,
Yes,
You
okay,
know, I'm assuming that, but I have to hear it again, like signing this compact. with-
I didn't specifically said that, I just said approve, partnering with Hopkinton. But you need a second
Yeah.
motion to approve signing the
Yeah, I think so.
Move to amend the motion that gives
point of order. We can just do a new motion because the motion's already been voted on, so we wouldn't, no, hold on, just let me finish my sentence. My point of order was that we don't amend it, we just make a motion, so that's.
okay, well, let's make a motion. Get it done because it's getting late.
So motion to approve, what was that? We wanted me to look at the second page, I don't want to put up.
Compacts.
Motion to approve the signing of the compact with Hopkinton.
All those in favor?
I,
Aye,
Aye.
okay,
Okay, secondly, since we just talked about it, Learn 365, Kate has been working with the YMCA. Discuss, putting our Learn 365 programs in their community room. They've offered to allow us to use that room on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 10 to 4 for $350 a month, which I think,
That's
I
a
think is
deal.
extremely reasonable. And the grant funding we have will actually pay for that.
so it's supposed to be helping kids that aren't out of school, but they're in school at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they have it open from, say, I don't know, 2 to 8 or something along the lines, so that kids that are out of school who need a little extra go. That's like, okay,
Yeah.
we'll open it from 7 in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
When everybody's in school.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have said we could use the facility for other programs during the day. It does make sense that it would be beyond 4 PM, and I will ask Kate if she'll talk to them about possibly to
Yeah.
maybe 5. I mean, I think they're talking about busing the kids there after school, immediately after school. So I'm sure she's taken that into account when she determines the end time on this. I think the Y uses that for programs beyond that time, so
Okay.
I assume that's why that end time was on there. But if it's directly after school, I think, if the program is only a couple hours long, then that would be significant time, but I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I knew that there had also been discussion regarding the partnering with the Y to move our seniors over there rather than to use the area of the police station. Was that discussed at all? Was that part
Well,
of this?
I think that's the reason for it being starting at 10. We want to have some senior programs in there. That room is for our use. And also to answer your question, this Learn 365 will actually go into next summer. So
Oh, okay,
that,
I got you.
yeah.
That's why it's 365.
Mm.
so, Mr. President,
Yes,
I don't see how this will work at all. We already have a senior center, community center, that's available 7 days a week from 7 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And the education, the way it was sold was we're gonna be able to do tutoring for children. To think they're gonna run from school and jump right onto a tutoring for an hour right after school, to me, that's not really such a realistic idea, and only 2 days a week. And it said, the direction said you had to be out by 4, you have to put everything away and all that, which means you have to finish by 3:30. Why don't we use our senior center? There are 2 rooms there. So even if the seniors are using 1 room, usually, depending on the activities, they do have an arts and craft, they have exercise, they have coffee.
my concern is having children in the police station, having large groups of children in the police station. I don't know, do you see it as an issue, chief?
The sound baffling is not good between the second floor and the first floor. I can tell you that back in the day, there were some children's parties that were allowed on the weekend. And it would interfere with interviews going on the first floor. sound travels down pretty clearly.
Hmm.
That they hear us, but we can hear them. Again, and the community center, senior centers, it is pretty solidly booked. But we manage what's available. I don't know if this is an addition to, or it's an alternative, or they've got equipment at the Y that we just don't have. But yeah, there's certainly a concern. I mean, it's really used. That is not a really good dual use building.
No. Well, that was my concern, the children being there. And the other thought was that we had long talked about partnering with the YMCA. This is a first step. And Capstone, who holds the lease on that building, is looking for town participation in that building as well.
Well, it doesn't serve the students. It may serve the seniors 2 days a week, but it's not gonna really serve the students,
Mr.
except
President.
maybe in the summer.
Mr. President, when we discussed this first time, I had mentioned to Ms. Finch that maybe we can contact the school, they're already there. There's plenty of empty classrooms, teachers are there, some of the aides are already there. The buses are gonna be there to bring the kids back and whatnot, because you have the late buses. And it will cost a dime, I'm sure. And like I said, the big thing is the kids are already there. And the ones that need the help, they're there for a reason, and it'd be easy to shuffle them over to maybe 1 or 2 empty classrooms at that point.
I don't know if this would work because Charahoe School is essentially owned by 3 towns. And the Learn 365 money is given to our town. Yet running that program at the Charahoe School would be an expense to all 3 towns.
Mr. President.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I want to just get your attention. Sometimes the school has their own programming going on afterwards. They have their own tutoring opportunities. They have their own clubs. They have everything else that they run. I think it's a good idea to reach out and partner with them, but I don't think that this opportunity is a terrible one. I do like the point about it closing at 4, and that maybe we could ask to have more time there. And another point I wanted to make was that this isn't going to run out our Learn 365 grant fund. So there will still be money for programs. It's not like we're just renting room space with the Learn 365 grant. So those are my initial thoughts.
Well, and Mr. President. again,
Rich.
Go ahead, Rich.
My other thought was, it goes till 4 o'clock. That could be 2 hours that somebody, whose child goes to that program can stay at work for another hour or 2 instead of having to, if they're doing it in after hours, they don't have to, rush home. They could use it as the ability for the kid to get extra education or whatever it is, and then come and pick them up at the end of that program. So it could double as I don't want to say the word, but almost like childcare for somebody who's in need of, they have to get out of work every single day because the child gets out of school at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They have to be home. If it's something where an extra 2 hours helps them put an extra plate of food on their table and their child gets more education at the same exact time, that could benefit people even greater. So it's what I'd like to see it go a little bit later, yeah, but we got to start someplace. That's why I think the Y, because they're already bringing students to the Y. They're already going to that. It's a central place. So I think it'd be beneficial to partner with them because they're already taking care of children.
Basically, this isn't town money, this is state money. And if we don't use it, we're going to lose it. But you had
My
something?
guess is that maybe there's some other place that we could rent that would be open after 4 o'clock.
I just want to avoid so
just-
if each
No, I
person could take,
It's a waste of money.
Mr. President, where are you suggesting?
I have a suggestion.
I don't know. I could start looking around the town, but ending at 4 o'clock when the students are in school.
Mhm.
That doesn't make
okay,
any
so
sense.
I want to reel it in. I'm not trying to break anybody's, but Louise has something
I just.
to add, and I wanted to hear what she had to say because we're kind of getting into a deadlock here. So.
It's just a suggestion and it's not necessarily in Richmond, but Wood River Health is building their new building and they have a community room that's available for community groups. And my understanding is it's at no cost if it's something during the day. So that would mean maybe Richmond residents would have to go to Hopkinton, but it's right off exit 2, the old exit 2. So they're supposed to be building a decent sized community room
Yeah,
for
it's a
this
pretty good size.
purpose. Yes.
Is it available? Is it open yet or is
It's
it just under
supposed
construction still?
supposed to be open this month. So the building.
Thank you.
No.
So you had requested the floor 5 minutes ago, but people
That's
kept
okay,
talking.
man, it's all right, I'm patient. Again, you know, like I said, when this first came out, it's tough for a municipality all of a sudden to stop playing school. And I know the money was there, and everybody wants to take it, that's fine. But let's try and, you know, like you said, not kill this and just come up with a quick consensus and get this done. I still think that the kids there in the school are already there. The school is a viable resource for the facility that they're building right off Route 2,
Exit 2.
exit 2.
Any further input from the audience, from the public? I'm sorry, I'm getting.
One other
Sure.
question. The number 3 says the town will provide the equipment and supplies. Who?
That'd be purchased with the loan.
No. Who's the person that's going to go and set it up? And set up all this stuff and who's gonna take time out of their day?
Well,
That's
so-
what I'm asking.
Yeah, but Kate, I wish I had Kate here now because I think she probably could have answered a lot of your questions. But she is spearheading this and she is getting people to like do the, you know, getting the guidance counselors to come and give programs, getting tutors to come and do the tutoring, those kinds of things. So, and she will be there every Sunday.
Oh.
Mr. President, how much time do we have to make a decision where it's going to be placed? Like
Well,
yesterday
this is the-
or?
That's what this
Yeah,
decision
proposal
is, to
is-
work with the
It's the
line.
only proposal I have, so. I mean, if you don't want to sign this, we'll have to go to Plan B.
And there is no plan B at the moment.
Just maybe make a few phone calls and
One other question. When's the clock run out on that money?
That was the answer that I did.
So my concern is I don't want to choose a location that we have to pay out of town. If we're going to use an out of town location, it has to be free or we need to keep the money within the town. I don't want to pay, just say hypothetically speaking, I don't want to pay Charahoe School to use a classroom. I don't want to pay a facility to use their
yeah. I agree
property
with
that's
that.
out of town.
Well, and I think that's a good point that you're also supporting the lot.
Yeah, and we need to, as I mentioned in conversation that we had with Capstone, that they're looking for town participation in the Y and cooperation and so on for their further investments. So,
Kate is on Zoom.
oh, great. Love to have her speak.
Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Kate Schimmel, Human Service Director. To answer some of your questions in regards to the why, we did partner with the school system initially for this grant to see what the needs were. The why is only one portion, or taking the community center those 2 days is only one portion of this grant. The school district was looking for quiet homework rooms for their students that are not located at the school. And so that is why we decided to partner. The Y had recently redone their community room. It's a beautiful space. It's very welcoming and inviting. So we decided to utilize that room, which they have youth evenings typically between 5 and 7 during the week, that the youth can go and utilize that space. So in speaking with the Y, we chose to have that space as a quiet homework room for 2 days a week, and hence where the 2 days comes from. So youth are already going there for, the teen activities. And so we've designated that space now as quiet homework room, a safe place in town that the kids can go, that is off the school campus, to do their homework, and potentially, as Councilman Nassini said, their parents don't have to worry about where they are after school if they wanted to work. The 4 p.m. time is negotiable. We decided to do 2:30 to 4 based on some conversations between the school district and Karen Allen at the YMCA. And we can move that to 5 p.m. depending upon utilization. I didn't want to automatically say 5 p.m. If it wasn't going to be utilized at that time. So there is room for flexibility on that partnership as well.
Excellent.
A portion of the morning, the space, we've actually gone out for a grant for the morning portion, to fund the morning portion. So if we want to designate that as, other activities, whether it be for preschoolers, whether it be for seniors, we are looking into other funding options, designated through grant funds.
Michael?
Mr. President, Kate, you've been working with the school up to this point with this program. Do you have any rough idea of how many kids would be utilizing this program at this point?
At this point, because we've been designated the funds as of last week, so we can begin spending the grant funding. We don't have the numbers yet for how many students would be utilizing it. We'd have to, we'd have to market it. We'd have to put it out and probably speak to the school committee. We haven't started to research who is interested, other than the teens that are already using the YMCA.
Right, how much with the money that's allocated through the grant, what's the maximum amount of kids that would be able to participate in this program?
Well, the maximum number of people, it would be designated by the community space, honestly, with how many are able to utilize the space. I believe it's 75, but I can't be, don't quote me on that, please. So it's welcome to all middle and high school Richmond resident students.
And to answer your question, I'm just looking back at the grant award notification they sent us, and our last status report is due 10/15/24.
Yes, it's a year-long grant. Without, as of right now, they don't think it will be renewed for the following year, but they're unsure of that status.
Oh, so this is only a 1-year grant,
Right.
1-year grant. Okay. So it sounds like maybe if you're lucky to have this program up and running by November.
We're hoping October.
Okay, it's even better.
If there's nothing else, so I have a motion.
I didn't make. Mr. President, I guess I'll do a motion to approve the agreement. Do I need to say you have to sign anything?
Sure.
And with Karen signing what she needs to sign?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Update on the Beaver River Playground.
Yes, so DPW has removed all of the equipment that we decided is no longer serviceable. We met with the playground company at the site last week. Our installer also met us there. He was supposed to start yesterday, however, with the rain, he did not, and he was not gonna be back until tomorrow because he had another job today, so I anticipate that they will start tomorrow on that. And so it's only a few days job, and then the safety surface will then be delivered, DPW will spread that, and I'll be able to give you an update the next day that's done.
Okay, thank you. All right, Chief.
Sure. Aaron, could you bring up that photo of the softball teams? please? Hi, everybody, how are you?
Good.
I'll be brief because I'm warm, I don't know about you. Because of you, you must be eating something that's increased your metabolism, 76 degrees. So, playing softball is fun, particularly when you're a child, but when you're an adult, it's fun, it's just painful. You don't recover from fast twitch muscle movements that well, and most of our force now is between, late 20s, but more on the end of mid-30s and well into their 40s. And they participated in this community event where the Cheraho Athletic Association at Dowfield. I played at Dowfield when I was a boy. I have vivid memories of that spot. I played with these guys pre-COVID, and they had some other great community events back then. They raised a lot of money. Not a lot, but a lot over a period of time. Every little bit helps. 3 teams participated in this tournament, but I'm really proud of the turnout that we had from our department. Guys offered to come in and work a mutual swap for somebody that was able to play so that they went into uniform and did their shift for them. And just, to me, that camaraderie building is fantastic. Children and families, officer wellness is everything these days. It's a very difficult job. I would call it the negative narrative you see a lot on social media about our profession. It's just not based in reality. There are examples of bad conduct everywhere in every human profession. Unfortunately, with ours, it involves firearms and sometimes serious injury to death. But this is an opportunity for people to come out and see what our personnel are really about, so helping the community. They raised, between the registration fee, the participation, about $750, then concessions. I'm thinking it's probably around $1,000 for Cheraho Athletic Association. September 9th, 3 teams: Richmond, PD, Hope Valley, Wyoming Fire. Great bunch of folks. Some great plays. Also, some for a chief, it was a little hairy watching some of these runs to home plate where they're trying to beat a throw, and I'm like, please don't roll an ankle. I can't afford an injury off duty that's going to put you out of work. But everybody, other than being sore the next day, if you saw police officers on Sunday, it's Monday after this game, getting a little slow out of their cruisers because of that. So great work by them. Wesley PD participated, Hope Valley Fire, and our department. Next year, they already have 7 more teams that want to do it. Kind of getting back into this post-COVID atmosphere where people are congregating and doing outdoor events together. It's great. Great job by our guys.
Question for you. Do you have a basketball league that you guys play in too?
I don't. We don't currently have anybody playing in that outside of Brock being an assistant coach for Cheraho.
Oh, okay.
He's one of our athletes, a natural athlete. Most of our guys are like, breaking the dust and rusty gloves coming out of a bunker, once a year or once every 2 years. So, it takes courage to go out there and perform.
Mr. President, we don't want to push the issue either, because between the softball and if you couple that with basketball, we have enough guys out on the road patrolling. Right, Chief?
Yeah, it's true.
I'm
I think
just
a 5-man team or a 5-person team is easier than 9 or 10 players in the field with a little bit of a bench. But fortunately, there were no injuries, and everybody had a really good time. It was a great day. It was September 9th.
Yeah.
It was a first responder tournament, and it was geared towards 9/11. Obviously, in memory of our first responders. Secondly, the Batmobile, and this is not the one that Adam West used to drive. I love that show. That is the vehicle in the back, the large truck. It is grant purchased. It's been around for about 3 years now, and it's available to communities in Rhode Island. It's Office on Highway Safety, State Police, and then participating municipal departments like ours. Sergeant Laterio from our department reached out to LJ Fiorenzano from State Police, arranged to have that in Charahoe Plaza on Saturday evening. It was 7 o'clock until 2 in the morning. Now, part of it is just awareness. We have been seeing an increase in crashes, fatalities. Some of those are attributed to impaired driving. Some are just, horrific accidents, people not paying attention. But the number of people that are at least a little impaired, have some alcohol in their system or other intoxicants is always pretty high in these crashes. So this is a wake-up call for people driving by. The great thing about that program is it costs us nothing. We have alcohol enforcement funds from the state. Our officers are out on overtime, working these details. They grab a drunk, they're not off the road now. They drop the individual, the impaired motorist, off to the BAT, where it's breath alcohol testing. That's the acronym. But there's 2 troopers inside of the truck. There's 2 breathalyzers. There's 2 holding cells. There's a live scan fingerprint machine that's interoperable with the FBI and BC of the state. They leave trailer after dropping the individual off, barring any concerns about the person wants to stay with that officer. They're back out on patrol. And these folks are doing it from soup to nuts on everything that needs to be done by law for this individual, whether, if they're not impaired, they're back into their vehicle. If they are, everything that needs to be established, all the T's and crossed, I's dotted are done. And it's all done with the BAT team. So that night, fortunately, we didn't have any drunk drivers. We had some folks that were kind of borderline, came on board, took the test, passed. They were all impressed with the interior of the Batmobile, particularly because they didn't go to the holding cell. But that's pretty much all I have.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you. Finance Director's report. Laura.
Hi. So I'm asking you to consider and authorize for the issuance up to the $2.5 million of general application bonds for the roads. While the FTM in 2022 has already authorized the issuance, our bond council has requested this resolution, which has more specific language needed for the authorization and issuance of those general obligation bonds. It's just much more detailed than the small voter approval that we got at the end of 2020.
President?
Yeah.
In regards to that, if you look on sheet G3A, the first paragraph, section 1, it says June 13, 2023.
But that
Town,
that
that's
hasn't changed.
2022.
It's 2022. I brought it to his attention and we will make that amendment to the resolution.
Mr. President, I had alerted the town to the roadworks funding that they had grants.
Correct.
And the town got 404,000. So my idea is to save the townspeople money, is that they voted to go out to bond for 2.5 million. So with that 404,000, that was a big windfall to the town. So it's my idea, and I'm just throwing it out there, that I think we should actually just go out to bond for 2.1 million.
So there is an authorization up to 2.5. How it was intended was to go out for the first million. We have Tug Hollow and North Road that we've just completed, and that would be paying for those 2 roads. We are then going to leverage that grant money with the next authorization, which will be sometime in this fiscal year, and leverage that other grant. We still have to talk with Scott Barber about the cost of additional roads. to see if the full 2.5 is needed, and I can come back to you with what amounts we're going to issue. Right now, it's $1 million. And then we're going to leverage that grant with whatever money we need to in which roads. And I can report back to you in 2 weeks as to what we're going to phase in as issuance. This is just the resolution authorizing the full amount, giving the same authorization that the voters did, and we can talk more about when that's going to be issued. You can have this authorization on the books indefinitely, and it doesn't have to be exercised.
So I just wanted to share Mike's concern that maybe 2.1, I, in my head, I had a $2 million figure, but you said the voters already gave us an option up to 2.5 million. So if we went to 2.1 million or 2 million.
Right, the authorization will always be out there.
Now, what is the bond rate right now? The interest rate.
I'm waiting for Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank to connect to me. They're actually going to a board meeting in 2 days. On this.
So it may go down, it probably might go up. Yeah.
So the rate we get from Rhode Island Infrastructure is less than the market rate.
Right.
So that's why we're going with Rhode Island Infrastructure.
President, the reason why I mentioned that, when I alerted the town to the roadworks project funding, I just want to stay within the parameters that the voters authorized, was the 2.5 million.
Right.
So that's my idea of just going to use the 2.1 and plug it with the 404,000, which then is the 2.5 million that the people allocated. And my idea is to save the townspeople 400,000.
I will take that under advisement as we're talking with Scott about what roads and at what time frame, and I'll come back to you.
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the issuance of 2.5 million on general funds for the town.
I'll second.
Discussion. It gives us the ability to go up to 2.5. We're not actually going to use 2.5. What Laura stated is that we're going to use $1 million because that's what they need right now. But then she's going to leverage, meaning she's going to work it into an equation so it benefits the town. So we're not actually going to spend all the other $1.5 million because she's got 400,000 that we can then put into, and she'll leverage it. So we're not spending 2.5 million. It's a whole.
Or we,
It's an entire process that she's got very well covered, and
She's our expert.
she's the expert.
or we could possibly use leverage and do additional roads. I think it's more a matter of the nature of the roads, the condition of the roads, which roads need to be done yesterday, and that's where I will take the opinion and direction from Scott Barber as to his opinion as to the funding as well, but I will come back to you.
Of course, Mr. President, I think, again, the expert, our Public Works Director, he actually already gave his opinion on what roads, because he's the one that came up with the 2.5 million. Well, he's the one who said what the roads were that he wanted done, and that encompassed the 2.5 million. So Scott Barber has already told us.
I'm not saying that he hasn't, but I also know that costs have gone up. So, like I said, I'll keep you informed. I'm
Yeah,
just
the
don't
longer we
want to-
wait, the more costs go up. The longer we wait, the interest
We
rates
will keep
go up.
you informed. This is just to authorize, this is for you to authorize the resolution, to approve the resolution as the voters did in 2020.
Does anybody have anything from the public? Okay, that being said, how do you vote?
Nay.
Nay.
Yay.
Yes.
Yes.
So we have licenses and we have a request from Trinity Solar, Joshua Smart for a 1-year door-to-door salesperson license.
Be here.
to see it.
You guys had questions?
It seems pretty standard. What is the latest you'll be going to somebody's door?
So the hours throughout the winter shift, we get to where we only go out till 7. In the summer, it goes to 8:30 because the sun's out for entirely longer.
And
Mr.
Josh,
President?
how,
I just had a question because you said we, and I've never had to approve one of these licenses before. It's for one person, right? So
It's
this is
just
for
for
you,
me,
so there's not gonna be a team of Trinity?
No.
Okay,
There may be the occasion where I would have a trainee
okay, but
and I would have to train them, yeah.
okay.
But
That
they
makes
would be right with me the entire time shadowing. If they were knocking the door, I would be right behind them. There would be no, okay, cool, man, go.
Okay.
You'll be free. Yeah,
That makes sense. And
Yeah.
while I have the floor, I just wanted to just give you some unsolicited advice. When door knocking in this area, make sure your car's marked because people will take pictures and post it and wonder who's at their door. So just be marked so people know that this is Trinity.
Facebook, so put a sign on your
Just to
car.
make people feel more
Okay.
secure when you're coming to their home that you're Trinity.
okay.
Just a word of
I'll
advice.
see if I can get a magnet or something.
Chief,
Sir, past practice with door-to-door sales, it's always best if you call the police department, sometimes stop in. Yeah. They'll ask for a copy of your license. We know what you look like in the days that you're actually soliciting. If you let our dispatcher know, because that's call central. Everybody and their brother calls is a weird black car driving around real slow. Guy doesn't have any uniform on. Now our guys are out searching neighborhoods for a person who's doing something they're authorized by the town to do. It helps us sort between the ones that are permitted and who aren't. So it's gonna save you a headache and it's gonna save us an aggravation. We really appreciate advance notice before you actually go out door to door. I appreciate that, Chief. I was actually gonna ask, because I know everywhere's different. I know in South Kingstown, I already dropped the packet off. I just called them, hey, this is where I'm at, this is the neighborhood I'm at. How long are you gonna be there this long? This is the route that I'm going with Hopkinton. I've been working with Hopkinton for the last few weeks. I'll just let them know, like, hey, I'm starting here. I'm gonna go down this road, and I leave at this time.
okay.
All about communication. We appreciate it, believe me.
Mr. President, if there's no more questions, I'd like to move to approve under section 42-46-6. Approval of 1-year door-to-door salesperson's license to Joshua Smart from Trinity Solar.
Second.
All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
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 Good luck.
All right, thank you. So next is unfinished business, and we had talked about going purely electronic for town council agendas and packets. And where we had left off is,
Mr. President,
what's up?
is that good? Where we left it off was that we were going to reach out. And I wasn't sure who was going to reach out.
Okay, can I
to the ADA.
finish?
Oh,
though?
sorry, I
Yeah,
was just trying to get
yeah,
attention.
Okay, so where we left off was Mike had brought in a doctor's note, stated he suffered from something that would stop him from reading from a screen. And so at that time, I had asked if Mike would return his tablet to the town that the town paid $800 for. So that if we were going to stay with the paper packet for Michael, that he would return that device. And
Mr. President.
yeah,
I'm using the iPad to check my emails from the town. It's already all set up and whatnot. So I am using it. I'm not using it for the purpose of, obviously, the agendas and stuff like that.
okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I wasn't sure who was going to reach out, so I did reach out to the governor's office. And they told me that it was an accommodation. Oh my God, now I'm losing the word for it. Sorry, I lost my train of thought, but it was a reasonable accommodation. And I just think that just looking back at the way council handled this, if I would have known in January, my decision probably would have been different. And I just think that if we could be more forefront with that information, that it would have just had this item wrap up a lot faster.
Yeah,
So after receiving that information that it is considered reasonable from an expert, because I do like to reach out to experts and learn more. I would have voted differently in January.
Okay, that being said, and the information provided, I would like to table this forever and move on to the next item.
Pilot.
Yes, file it in the circular file. All right, so moving on to number 2. Oh, okay.
I make a motion to file.
Second.
All those in
One other
favor?
discussion.
What? Go ahead.
At the end of the term, your tablet gets turned back into the town.
Oh, yes.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, moving on to item number 2, discussion and consideration of potential amendments or additions to the ordinance 2.20.040, appointment, probation, layoff, and authorization of the town clerk to advertise for public hearing. I did go over that myself, and I think that the reason that we originally wanted to alter the document was to prohibit town councilors from being part of the interview process for town employees. That the town council is to only be involved in department heads, that the town council would not be part of the interview process for clerks, snow plow drivers, police officers, and so on. So,
The first draft that you saw, this is the draft dated August 22nd. I'm sorry, what's the date of draft? The word or the phrase elected officials was in there. And I took that out so that it would exclude anybody on the town council from being on that committee.
okay,
Mr. President,
yes,
when I reviewed that, it actually says at the very end, sorry, I'm pulling it up. Or expertise applicable to the position filled. So I noticed that town elected officials was removed, but by reading this and just seeing it the way it's written, that or expertise applicable could lead somebody to say, okay, I'm going to invite a town councilor. So the way this is drafted without having a provision that excludes it doesn't cover that. So what I gathered from our last meeting was at least the council majority wanted that in there. And I think that we should move forward with it in there. And I understand why some people would want flexibility. But I think that the risk is not worth it, because you're not only risking an issue with the town councilor, but you're risking an issue with the town solicitor, not town solicitor, town administrator, where it just, I don't want to rehash what I said last time. It just, all those same concerns are still there. So I think it's really important that we do specify that town councilors should not be present.
or something to the thinking two things. What I wanted to see, town council should only be involved in department heads, town administrator, police chief, DPW director, solicitor, that kind of thing. We should not be involved in, I hate using the term rank and file because it demeans those positions, but we shouldn't be involved in rank and file hiring at all. But we should be involved in interviewing directors, because that is, after all, going to affect our town greatly. So I'd like that spelled out specifically in the ordinance.
Yes,
Mr. President. Want to go?
Go ahead.
No.
Yes,
Mr.
go.
President, I went through this ordinance also. So I have some thoughts. So we all want the hiring process to go smoothly. And I want to make sure that the town council members are not rubber stamps for the hiring process. I also do not want to humiliate a potential client by having that person present at a meeting and then not be appointed. I believe the names of applicants should not be kept secret from the town council members, but the town council members must protect the names of candidates. Rhode Island is a small state, so if we are evaluating candidates, it is likely that someone on the town council will have personal knowledge of the applicants. that does not show on the resume. And that information could be helpful in our decision-making. Therefore, I am proposing some word changes to section B and then also section C, starting at line 7. So for section B, when you go to line 7, the first word is position to be filled. So after that, at least 5 days before the town council meeting at which the town administrator will make a hiring recommendation to the town council, the town administrator shall distribute to town council members information about each applicant determined to be qualified. The information about the applicants, which will include evaluations of the applicants prepared by the town administrator, will be provided to the town council members with the understanding that names of applicants must be held in confidence. The town council will go into executive session to discuss the candidate proposed by the town administrator. The town council may ask the candidate to join part of this meeting to answer questions. The town council will decide during the executive session whether to appoint the applicant recommended by the town administrator, may ask for another of the candidates to be considered during that meeting, or may ask the town administrator to re-advertise the position. The public appointment will not happen at the meeting where the decision is made, but will happen at the next scheduled town meeting that will alleviate possibly humiliating someone if they weren't chosen.
Can I interrupt just for a second?
Yep.
Is this for department heads or all employed?
That one was for department head.
Okay,
Section C
that makes
did-
sense.
Section C did go to the other employees, which would be the same thing. In terms of department heads, I would want that to include the building inspector and the electrical inspector and the plumbing inspector. Yeah. So I don't care about C
Yeah.
really.
Those aren't department heads though, so I'm not, you would
Right.
have to delay, you'd have to specify that in the ordinance.
I really feel it should only apply to department heads. That's,
Mr. President, this is getting deep into the weeds. The town council, right here, sorry, letter C, even B. Town council may appoint the applicant recommended by a town administrator. May request a closed session at a subsequent meeting to discuss appointment of one or other applicants determined to be qualified. Or it may ask the town administrator to re-advise the position. Again, at that point, then we are effectively putting ourselves into a position to what's the word, where am I? Where we can't influence the town employees. Just that sentence alone gives me, it puts the hair up on the back of my neck. You're putting yourself into a position where you don't want to be.
Yeah, Mr. President.
yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. That was gonna be another suggestion that I was gonna say is literally just eliminate the last sentence because it's already covered by the charter. But I wasn't gonna bring it up, but it's a good one.
The voters voted, the town council shall not direct town employees. This is directing town employees.
The town charter, Mr. President, the town charter says that the town council appoints. And if,
Approves or
my,
disapproves.
so my, the writing that I did was to make a smooth situation where the town council fulfills its obligation without humiliating anyone. We don't approve of someone, and it removes us from being a rubber stamp.
We're not a rubber stamp, though, in all due respect.
I gotta ask just to rein it in a
Mr.
little bit.
President.
I'm-
Just
I just
Let-
feel,
let Rich finish. I don't
This
want to
is-
see it back and forth. I want to just move forward. So Rich, then yourself.
We're
please.
relying on the town administrator to do her position, to do her duty, which is to go through and vet people who have applied for a position. They deem whether they will work with the town or not, whether they're worthy to work with the town or not. And then they bring their recommendation. The town planning, she had 5 other people that came. They all deemed them to be not in a place where they would serve our town well. Talia was the last person to be deemed a competent, well-advised person to be part of our team. Where I think that we're making a mountain out of this instead of literally looking at the people who are going to be working with these employees and giving them the respect that they deserve, because they're going to be working with them every day or on a very high level all the time. We are not. And we're going to go around in circles, but there's no need to. We should not be determining at all. We should not be influencing the town administrator on who we would like to see in a position at all. It's not right. And I think it's a road that we should not be going down.
And then Sam was next.
I was going to just say that I feel like the ordinance as written does handle confidentiality because the applicant shall, like the information we receive shall remain confidential. So that was one thought I had. And then another question was answered later, so never mind. Thank you.
Yeah, Aaron.
If I may, can Karen Ellsworth explain the disclosure of notice and bringing candidates into executive session? Just so the council understands what that would be.
Thank you.
Open meetings act.
If you are going to discuss character, mental or physical health, job performance of any individual, you are required by the Open Meetings Act to notify that individual in advance so that that individual can require you to hold that session in open session rather than in executive session. That doesn't mean that the person that you're going to discuss is entitled to be in the closed meeting, because he's not. He is entitled to ask you to hold it in open session.
President.
Go ahead.
I always hear the term influence. And the town council shouldn't influence town hall employees. What you're doing is you're taking an elected official who is elected by the people of the town, and you're saying that he can't voice his opinion to a town hall employee. What's happening is it's a very dangerous pendulum shift here, and it doesn't have anything to do with Ms. Pinch personally. She just happens to be sitting in that seat right now. What you're doing is the pendulum shift is has all the influence and we don't. And that pendulum shift is very dangerous because over the last 30 years, 20 years, we've taken the clerk's position from an elected position to an appointed position. So then whoever is in the seat of town administrator goes into that office and says, you work for me. Now we've taken the treasurer / finance director, that position used to be elected. Now it's appointed. So again, whoever is in that seat, and again, Ms. Pinch, it has nothing to do with you personally. That administrator will walk into the office and say, you work for me. All the influence is coming from the town administrator. And that's a dangerous pendulum shift to our form of government. Because then you're criticizing any council person that may go in and voice their opinion to a town hall employee. And I don't think that's right. I don't think it's just, and I don't think it's fair for the town's people as a whole, the ones that elect the town council. It shouldn't be like that. So you talk about influencing, the influence is all, the pendulum shift is all going to the town administrator, whoever it may be.
So I wanted to weigh in on that. In the bad old days, a politician could go in and bully a town employee to hiring somebody that's his friend or his brother or what have you. A town councilor, and I remember growing up in East Greenwich because my father was involved in politics in East Greenwich, that there were town councilors who would go in and threaten employees' jobs and make employees feel really uncomfortable. And my feeling is by keeping us out of the hiring process for rank and file employees, we are protecting the sovereignty of the employees. No one wants to work in a hostile work environment. And there has been situations just over the last year where people are uncomfortable with their jobs, they're uncomfortable with the way they're approached by different people and on the council and in different situations. And so, in my opinion, this whole adjustment that seems like we're going around and around in a circular argument, why do you want it? Because I want it, that kind of thing. We do not need to hire a town clerk. We do not need to hire a snowplow driver. We don't need to have anything to do with that whatsoever. And we shouldn't have any influence over it. We shouldn't have any comment on it. And it says so in the charter, and the voters spoke. And I really think we're just killing it by debating this to death.
Mr. President.
Yes.
So if you don't think that we should have any influence over anybody who's not a department head, then number C can just, letter C can just be scratched. So if that's what you're suggesting. It sounds like that's what you're suggesting. I'm not trying to, speak
Well,
for you, but that's
yeah.
my take on that. I also agree that we're going around in circles. So I'd like to make a really specific motion so that way we can kind of just move this forward, not saying that this is done, but then that we can then add other items if needed and maybe advertise afterwards. But I'd like to just put a specific motion to say that I'd like to add the motion to add language prohibiting town councilors from being in interviews to paragraph B. Thank you for the second, just so we can move past this one item. I don't think, and I'll rehash it just because we are, but we do not need to be in the interviews. We are already making the decision when it's final here. And by going into the interview, we could have an undue influence. But also I feel like it puts the town employee, the town administrator in a really tricky spot where she or he could be accused of pulling in a swing vote into the interview when that wasn't the case. Or maybe a town councilor could try to force their way into interview. And I just feel like it's better than the benefit of possibly having somebody who might have financial experience in on a finance director position when we are not the only people who can be in interviews. There are so many other options out there. So I don't feel like it's detrimental to the interview process for us to not be there, but then the risk of us being there is much greater. And I hope that was clear. Thank you.
Mr. President, I don't think any of us are recommending at this time that a town council member be on part of the interview process. And that's not what I wrote in my,
Yeah,
My
I didn't say
proposal.
that that's what you wrote. What I said is that was the thing that originally brought this to discussion.
Right. And for clarity, it's not here. So
Right.
that's why I brought it up.
Mr. President also says that we're not going to get the applications or the resumes.
For rank and file employees,
Yes.
sounds like a
anybody.
great idea to me.
for anybody.
It just,
They don't
Point of
usually
order.
send it.
right,
Point of order, we do have a motion on the floor, and just to help us move this conversation forward.
we're trying to
We could
discuss.
keep, but
We're
please let me
discussing.
keep it to the motion of whether or not town councilors should be in the interview. And then once that motion's done, we can then discuss other items.
Who made a motion? That motion.
She did and Rich seconded
Which
it.
subsection were you talking?
It wasn't, not in there anyway.
It needs to be in there so that it does not come to light again. That's our point.
So, Mr. President, it could be also too, it's like when you look at the election process every 2 years, the majority of the people of this town could vote, say, 4 Republican and 1 Democrat. but then you've got a known Democrat that is in the position of town administrator. That goes against the grain of what the people voted for, all right, when they voted 4-1. Then you're putting, again, all the power into the town administrator's seat. And you're taking it away from the people that voted 4-1, say hypothetically, it could go the other way. It could go the other way. I just feel that the pendulum shift is a dangerous shift. And again, being an employer myself, I am not afraid to hire people. I am not afraid to look at their resumes, and I am not afraid to make a decision myself.
Mr. President. This is to have to have the public vote for, I'm just gonna use you or as the financial director. And they could literally have no clue on how to do any municipal budgeting at all. But yet the people voted for that person and they put them in that place. That would be a horrible situation. Right now, we have a situation where you have a team of people who put the information out there. There's a job available, the financial director, and then you have financial directors who that's all that they do come in. And it no longer is a popularity contest because somebody could go out into the general public if this was a voted position and be the nicest person on the planet, swoo everybody, get the position, and then have absolutely no clue. Kind of like last, not on this council, the last election at the state level. Someone is our financial director for the state who has zero clue on financial directing. And we let the other gentleman who had decades of knowledge go by the wayside because it was a popularity contest. This eliminates the popularity contest.
I
You have
agree.
only people who should be in the position to be in the position. And then that position works well with all the other bodies within the town hall. That is not a pendulum swing and a pendulum that it's not a power grab. And I'm really kind of upset that is being portrayed this way because it's not. This is a position, and all the positions that are in the town. I'm sorry, Luis, that you don't like it.
I don't.
I'm so sorry that you think that
Rich,
it's
come on,
not.
let's
Be
stop.
polite,
This
use your
is a-
P, be polite.
This is a position.
Stop.
And I'm explaining myself. All of these positions that are being had are for the professional benefit of all of the town. That's it. There's no power grab in any of the positions, not from Karen, not from Laura, not from Erin, not from, I'm sorry. Talia, thank you, sorry. But any of the positions that are here in this town are not power positions. They are well granted, duly granted, because they are professional and they're the experts in those positions. That's what you want. And then we have people who oversee the employees. And those people are vetted by the professionals, not us. And that's the way that it should stay. And I'm sorry that if people don't like it, they don't like it. But that's the way that you run a professional organization. If you don't want to be a professional organization, you want to be a popularity contest, well, then don't vote for me in November.
Mr. President.
And I wanted to invite Louise up. I want to break the tension up here, bring another idea in and just,
I just have a question about what you're discussing right now, which I think is the subsection B. My question would be regarding filling a vacancy for a department director's position. Question, have any members of the town council ever been a participant in an application process? Have they been a participant in interviews since this council has been sworn in?
yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. And I would say my follow-up to that would be, in what capacity was the, what town council person was it? And for what position were they involved in the interview process?
I explained that previously, but I will
Okay, I'm
explain it
sorry,
again.
I don't recall.
Actually twice in two other meetings. I stated that there was a lot of opposition, very heated opposition to hiring our human service director. So I went to the interview for the simple reason to make sure that the interview took place and that no one interrupted it or derailed it. That was my purpose there, no other purpose.
Okay, but when, in that example, and I appreciate your candor and your transparency, but in that example, you were afforded the opportunity to participate in that process.
I didn't participate in it. I just hung out and made sure that somebody didn't derail the situation.
Okay. So you have a specific definition of participation, and I respect that. So I guess my follow-up question to that would be, Helen's suggested language revision. Is there any portion of that language revision that the council would, reconsider? And then I think, Mark, your point earlier was you didn't want to be involved in the hiring or the interview process for rank and file. But it seems to me like you had a particular position about a department director's position. So I just would like you to clarify that, what your position would be in filling a vacancy for a department director.
Okay, say we were hiring a new town administrator. I definitely think that the town council should interview a new town administrator. Say we were hiring a new town solicitor. I think the town council, the whole town council, should participate in hiring a new town solicitor.
So you just said participate in the interview process. In
Correct.
this language B, forgive me if I'm wrong, I don't have my cheater glasses on right now. It doesn't say anywhere in section B, or does it, Karen Ellsworth, that
How can the administrator hire the administrator?
you just said town council members.
How can, who else is gonna do it if they don't do it?
He just said town council members would be invited to be included in the interview
Well,
process.
they would have to be included in the interview
Interview.
process. Who else is
Mr.
gonna
President,
do it?
why are you getting so hostile towards me?
All right,
Please don't.
Let's
I'm
stop.
You used to be every single time.
I'm
on the
not being
podium.
hostile.
Please stop.
I think it's-
Please address the chair. Thank you.
I'm addressing the chair. I'm not finished. I'm
Well,
addressing the chair.
Okay.
And I would like to
then
know,
that's
just
what
your
I asked.
clarification on that.
Can I just
I just want your clarification on that. Thank you.
go ahead? What do you have? to
So I believe, but I am not certain that there's a specific procedure to hiring a town administrator, which includes like a subcommittee and things like that. I don't want to go down that train because that's not what we're here. But another question was asked that was regarding your proposed language. I like the idea of going into executive session to
Me too.
discuss it. Please let me finish.
Mm.
However, I find it unnecessary to be in the ordinance because that's covered by like OMA, and that's going to be ever changing. And then every time the OMA changes, we'll have to change this. So I like that idea, but I just don't think it's necessary to have here. So thank you.
Mr. President, I just wanted to add, I wrote it in this order to make it a smooth situation, that's all.
I think that your additions are well thought out. I just want to absolutely make sure that this isn't for every employee in the town.
Yeah, I don't care. I only added it because it was asked in the last meeting.
Okay,
Mr. President, can I remind you, we have a motion on the floor.
yes.
And-
So I think we've discussed it to death, so would you please restate the motion, because at this point it's 8 o'clock.
Add language to prohibit town council interviews in section B.
Okay, so that being on the floor, how do you feel about?
Okay,
Nay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I think,
Hey, Mr. President, can I make a suggestion? I really like Helen's revision to that. I think maybe we can let Helen do a motion to give these to the solicitor and have them worked in to that section and then brought back to the council for review. There's no rush on this. Status quo will stay the same. But I think these revisions that, Councilor Sheehan penned, I think hold some merit. And I think it's pretty darn close to, I think, my feelings, and I think from your comments, you also, Mr. President.
How do you feel?
I was gonna suggest that myself, just so that everyone could see what it looks like in writing compared to what the draft says already. I don't think you need a motion to do that. I think you just need a motion to continue the agenda item. You could continue it to your next meeting or the meeting after that. And at your next meeting, I can give you two different versions of the same paragraph, and one would have Helen's language in it.
Mr. President, I make a motion to continue this to the next meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Can you email that to me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
I have it.
Okay, that was fun. Going on to item 3, and this is fun. I'm really excited about this. I actually printed it out. Is the small business grant. And it looks like we had a very rare, awesome collaboration by our different groups and teams here, and we've come up with something that's really, really good.
Mr. President, I move to pass.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Awesome.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
I think it was a great collaboration, and the EDC was involved in it too. And I think they had some great input to it also. And that's what happens when you have good discussion. We come to a great resolve in the end.
I agree.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to be a part of it. Thanks.
Yeah. It was Sam's initial proposal, and everybody worked together on it, and we've got a working thing. I can't wait to have all of that money gone, because so many businesses want to move to town. Of course, I always dream a lot. So next is new business. And we have a request from Councilor Wilcox to unseal the following executive session minutes. And they're January 3rd, January 25th, and June 6th, 2023. And before we go any further, I wanted to make a comment regarding that. So when we go into executive session, it's like going into the cone of silence. We go into executive session to discuss very sensitive topics, very legal topics. We go into, as Councilor Colasanti once said, we go in to let our hair down a little bit. We speak freely with the expectation that what we say in those executive sessions are never going to make it to social media, make it to the public, make it into the Beaver River Valley Times, the Westerly Sun, etc. And so I feel personally that any executive session should, once it's sealed, it should remain sealed unless there's some sort of federal investigation. Then I can see opening it up, but I do not see any purpose other than a political one to open executive session minutes. And with that,
Mr. President.
with that being said, I go to Sam
Thank
because
you.
she's the one that made the proposal.
Respectfully, I don't appreciate that you're claiming it's political. We entered executive session specifically to, and this idea actually stemmed from this happening on June 6th. We entered to discuss a job performance. And then when we left, we continued to discuss it in open session. I thought to myself, why did we even seal those if it's all public anyway? So
That was our mistake.
Right, so I'm going to continue. So I went home and I thought about it and I was like, whatever, it's fine, water under the bridge, we'll move on. But then when the second job performance came up, I thought, okay, if this isn't public session and everybody's so concerned about it, why are we still hiding the June 6th minutes? So that was the initial thought process, because it really would be beneficial to transparency. I don't think there's an expectation that elected officials should hide from the public. I think if we can open them, then we should, and we should always be on the behavior that, people will find out what was said. And it's also beneficial, I think, so that we don't have to rehash it over and over. It can just be known. So that way, as we're seeking a resolution to this ongoing problem, we can get there. That thought then went into, all right, well, what else have we sealed that we can unseal? And I don't think we should unseal January 3rd because that's still pending litigation. But I do think January 25th is overdone. So that one was kind of an effort for me to be transparent with the public about what I have done as an elected official. So I don't think we should unseal January 3rd, but I do still think January 25th and June 6th could be opened. And we did take the time to reach out to like a personnel expert on that, who said, really, as long as something private, like a social security number, I think mental health might have fallen under that as well, that we shouldn't, but that doesn't apply here because we already had the conversation publicly, not only on the same day at 11:30 at night when it was way too late to rehash the 2 hours we spent up there, but also again, briefly at our last discussion, the special meeting where I didn't get those concerns addressed to a way that we can move forward.
Mr. President, I'd like to put a motion on the
Were
floor.
you done?
I'd like to put a motion on the floor to keep the executive minutes, January 3rd, 2023, January 25th, 2023, and June 6th, 2023. Sealed.
Second,
Okay, so now we can discuss that. You have
Mr.
anything to add?
President, I agree with you that when we have executive sessions, they should remain sealed unless there's a particular reason why they need to be unsealed, like a federal problem. I agree with you.
Mr. President, I also want to chime in on that and agree with you that they should stay sealed. It was well put.
Karen?
There are a number of different reasons that you are entitled to hold an executive session under the Open Meetings Act. And they cover all kinds of different situations. Sometimes you are going to hold a closed session because you're talking about the town buying a piece of real estate and you don't want it to be publicly disclosed because someone else could come along and buy it. In that kind of situation, after the sale has already taken place or not taken place, there's no longer any reason to keep the minutes sealed. But whenever you're talking about someone's character, health, job performance, I think that sometimes things are said during a closed session with the expectation that they will remain private. And therefore, it's not a situation where you should always assume that it's safe to unseal executive session minutes involving that kind of discussion, even if the topic was also discussed in public, because there's that expectation of privacy.
My feeling is that if I go into executive session and I speak, my expectation is that those words never come out. That's what those are for. If we're gonna eventually open up or selectively open up executive sessions and unseal the minutes, why bother having an executive session at all? It just, there needs to be a line, and it can't, every line in the world can't be gray. Some of them have to be black and some of them have to be white. And with that being said, if there's no more comments here, I'd like to invite the public to weigh in.
I have a quick comment. I don't really think the question is why or what purpose or even what was said. It sounds like there was a statement made that I'm doing this for political reasons or requesting it for political reasons. And
Well,
I just also feel like we shouldn't hide what we're doing. I have nothing to hide. So again, the question isn't really why or what purpose, but simply, can we unseal them? So really our opinions don't have a big say in that. It's really just simply if we can.
to me, it's just going down a slippery slope. Everybody's always concerned about a slippery slope. That's a slippery slope. Joyce and Louis, Joyce, did you have? Oh, okay, Louise.
Okay, so Mr. President, I appreciate your comments about when things are discussed in executive session, that there's an expectation of privacy and confidentiality. And you mentioned something about social media. So there was a post by the Beaver River Valley Community Association on August 30th saying the following. Valancourt, who was hired in March, is currently on probation following an incident at Pasquale Farms during which he is said to have been impolite to the owner. Now, I went through all of the town council meetings from open session. I don't ever remember, or I could not find, and I went through this painstakingly, and it took a long time to go through these town council meetings, that there was no discussion in open session about Pasquale Farms, that business. So that would lead me to believe that if Pasquale Farms was discussed in executive session, that someone disclosed that to the reporter from the Beaver River Valley Community Association. So I would say that if that is your intent, that executive session is supposed to be kept private and confidential, that I would like to, understand how Ms. Drummond from the Beaver River Valley Association was privy to this information.
So that information is all around town. And was all around town. I've had third parties approach me about it well before we discussed it with the town council. And there's a lot of information that gets spread all around town. So I don't know how it got to her. And frankly, it's common knowledge. I don't think I think our dealings with it in executive session should be kept in executive session. Whatever allegedly happened. I mean, there was a rumor around town that I tried to close down the dog park in 2018. And I had dozens of people not vote for me, and the actual fact was that I had called to attention that the dog park was on an uncapped landfill that was a Superfund site. Rumors spread around. You can't stop the rumors, but you can stop the exposing or the release of executive session. That's all.
Thank you.
Sir.
Bob Sayer, Richmond resident. Well, blue tonight, Mike. I agree. I was a union rep and they had executive sessions and we were never privy when they had the executive sessions, we were on the outside. I do agree that anything said in executive session should stay in executive session. As for Ms. Dinsmore's comment, it's possible that Pasquale Farms released that information because they were directly involved with Mr. Valancourt. It doesn't necessarily mean, and you can't just assume that came from any counselor during executive session. But the one thing that I would like to say is that when Mr. Valancourt wanted to have it in open session, I was here. I listened to what was going on. But what that meeting was supposed to be about was never concluded. It was just passed on and just going to go and, let's review what's going on at the Washington County Fair. And when I stood at this podium the last time, I said the same thing. It's one of our greatest fundraisers for this town. And I think that it could have been handled a little more diplomatic. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? All right, so we have a motion made by Councilor Colasanti, seconded by Helen. And I'm going to look for a vote on this time.
Aye.
Aye.
Voting to,
Not on seal minutes.
thank you.
Guess I'll join. Aye.
Okay.
President.
Yeah.
Motion to approve the amendment of chapter 8.18.080 code of ordinances regarding replacement transfer station placards Authorization to the town clerk to advertise public hearing.
Second.
All those, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr.
Alright.
President, move to file communication.
Mr. President, I
Sure.
would not like to, the two of them I want to just mention.
Okay,
The first one is, the letter, that came to all of us, the citizens and taxpayers of Canal Lane, complaining about, well, many cars parking on one property. And I communicated with the chief about that. All the cars are registered. They're not breaking any zoning rules. So I just wanted the person who wrote the letter to know that it's ugly, but they're legal. And the other thing was, I'm not going to read the whole resolution, but it's from the town of New Shoreham, Rhode Island, resolution on September 5th. And I'll just read one paragraph that says, now therefore be it resolved that the town council of the town of New Shoreham expresses its deepest thanks and heartfelt gratitude to the people of Richmond/Carolina for their friendship, willingness to help a town in need of assistance, and the investment of resources made over the years to build a well-equipped and extraordinarily professional fire department. Because we help them in their fire.
so I almost forgot about this, but this is Fireman's Month. And so to respond to what Helen brought up this month, we thank our firemen, our volunteers especially. Our paid firemen are very well paid. They still risk their life, but we have a unique situation in this town where the taxpayers benefit greatly from a bunch of people who are very professional and they volunteer. And I just wanted to give a shout out to those people who are volunteer firemen in our fire districts.
For sure. Thank you.
Motion, on the second motion.
To file the. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
President, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.